On the day I turned 75, the only candle I blew out was stuck in a bakery cupcake. In the solitude of my kitchen, it was just me and that tiny flickering flame. An echo of the light I sometimes felt was dimming within me. The quiet of my apartment, usually a comfort, felt heavy that day. A suffocating silence, broken only by the incessant stream of notifications from my tablet. Each little ding, each bright flash on the screen, felt less like a sound and more like a physical jolt, if I'm honest. Those pings weren't birthday wishes, you see. Oh no, they were worse. They were vivid, almost painfully bright photos of my son, Mark, and his wife, Deborah. My teenage grandchildren, Liam and Chloe, were in them too, all beaming. They were on this luxurious weekend getaway, a real splash. I saw photos of them clinking glasses filled with expensive wines, plates piled with gourmet food, and stunning, perfect landscapes stretching behind them. Every image screamed perfect life. But amidst all that curated joy, there wasn't a single message. Not one little text, not even an emoji was for me. Nothing, just an overwhelming absence. The pain of that invisibility, that profound sense of being utterly forgotten, was almost physical. It settled deep in my chest, a tight, cold knot that squeezed the air out of me. This wasn't a sudden shock. You understand. This feeling, this dull ache of emotional coldness and distance, had become, sadly, all too familiar over the past few years. Just another layer of that silent humiliation that had slowly built up around me. They didn't remember my birthday. No, not the date, not the milestone, but I knew, deep down, they remembered very well everything I had given them. Every single sacrifice I had made. Every last bit of my inheritance. Every penny I'd carefully saved and nurtured. That helped build the foundation for that very life they were now so proudly showcasing to the world. And there was a secret too, a significant one, a cornerstone of their comfort that they had conveniently chosen to forget. I sat there, staring at that small cupcake, at its lonely, dancing flame, and a sudden, fierce, icy resolve settled in my heart. This, I decided right then and there, would be the very last time I would ever shed a tear for being treated like some disposable item in their lives. The last time I would feel that sharp sting of rejection. That forgotten birthday, that solitary moment, it wasn't an end at all. It was, instead, a very clear beginning. The beginning of the end of my quiet patience. The true start of my own, long overdue liberation. They probably, though, someone easily overlooked, easy to dismiss, someone who wouldn't ever rock the boat. But they forgot who they were truly dealing with. They forgot that hidden behind my tired appearance, behind the polite smiles and the quiet acquiescence, there was a strength, a quiet power they never ever imagined I possessed, let alone would be willing to use. And that, dear friends, was their biggest, most fundamental mistake. But what they didn't know yet was that the biggest humiliation was still to come, and it wouldn't be mine. My name is Eleanor. I should have said that sooner, shouldn't I? It feels like we're just getting acquainted, and I'm already bearing my soul. I was an English teacher for over 40 years. Can you imagine? 40 years shaping young minds, trying to teach them the beauty of words, the power of stories. It was a good life, a full life. My late husband, Arthur, well, he was my rock. We worked hard, Arthur and I, our whole lives. Not for fancy cars or designer clothes, no. We wanted security. We wanted to give our son, Mark, opportunities. Chances that we, from our own humble beginnings, never really had ourselves. That was our driving force, our biggest dream. We ended up buying a large, comfortable house in a really good neighborhood in Seattle. It took years of sweat and saving, every extra penny put aside. I remember us walking through that empty house, hand in hand, picturing it full. We dreamed of seeing our grandchildren, Liam and Chloe, running through that big garden, their laughter echoing through the halls. It was meant to be our family's heart. All those years, I guess I was always the emotional pillar of the family, the one everyone came to for comfort, for advice, for a steady hand. What no one knew, not even Arthur, was that I was also the financial pillar. Quietly, behind the scenes, making sure everything stayed afloat, always putting a little extra aside just in case. After Arthur passed away, after that huge gaping hole opened up in my life, all my energy, every ounce of it, and a really substantial part of our savings, our assets, everything we had built together, well, it all went to Mark. He was my son, my only child. What else was I going to do? I helped him launch his very first business, putting up the initial capital. I used my connections, calling in favors, working tirelessly behind the scenes to get him his very first clients. I wanted him to succeed, to soar. And when he got married to Deborah, a lovely girl back then, and they started having children, our grandchildren, Liam and Chloe, I made it. The idea was simple, you see. They could save up there, get on their feet, build their own future without the burden of a mortgage. It was supposed to be temporary. That's what we all said. A few years, maybe. But the years, they just melted away, didn't they? Mark's company, the one I helped start, it grew. It really took off. And me? Well, I ended up moving. I found this small apartment. For more peace and quiet, I told everyone, including myself. It sounded logical, sounded like a choice I was making for me. And truthfully, I never minded living simply. I truly didn't. As long as my family was well, as long as they were united and thriving, that was enough for me. My comfort was seeing their comfort. I brought very little with me to this small place. Just my memories, really. Photos of Arthur, photos of a younger Mark, a few treasured trinkets, and some important documents, all neatly tucked away in an old wooden box that used to sit on Arthur's desk. Among those papers, right there, in a worn manila folder, was the deed to that large house. The house where Mark, Deborah, Liam, and Chloe were living their luxurious life. That deed, it was proof. Proof that the roof sheltering their success, their comfort, their expensive wines and perfect landscapes was still legally and morally mine. They forgot that, of course. They forgot all about the origin of their good fortune. But I didn't. I could never forget. I thought my generosity, my endless giving, my quiet sacrifices would be repaid with love, with presence, with the warmth of family. I truly believed that. I just wanted to be a part of their lives, a valued part. But I was about to discover something very hard, something very painful, something that would change everything. For them, I was just an investment, an old, forgotten investment that had already yielded its expected return and was now, apparently, past its expiration date. Past its expiration date. That's how it felt. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The distance began subtly, you know, like a cold breeze seeping in through a crack you hadn't even noticed was there. It wasn't a sudden storm, but a slow, chilling drift that settled in. Mark, my son, his calls, they used to be frequent, full of news, even if it was just about his day. Now they became shorter, rarer, always rushed. "Mom, got an important meeting, gotta run." Or, "Just checking in, swamped with work." The words were there, but the warmth, the genuine connection, slowly faded from his voice. It felt like he was ticking a box, not truly engaging, like I was just another item on his to-do list. And those Sunday lunches, oh, how I cherished them. They used to be sacred. A tradition Arthur, my late husband, and I started, held at the big house, our house, full of laughter, the comforting smell of roast chicken, the clatter of plates. But then they started to be canceled, one by one. "We're too tired, Mom," Deborah, my daughter-in-law, would say. Her voice, always so perfectly polished, barely hid her relief, her eagerness to get off the phone. "The boys have a commitment," she'd add, referring to Liam and Chloe, my teenage grandchildren. Always an excuse, never an apology that felt sincere. Not really. I started to feel like a burden, a scheduled chore they kept trying to reschedule out of existence. A lump would form in my throat each time, a quiet hurt that I tried to swallow down. Small promises, too. They just seemed to unravel, like loose threads on an old sweater. Mark would promise to take me to a doctor's appointment, saying he'd be there, not to worry. Then, at the very last minute, usually when I was already waiting by the door, leaving me scrambling, calling a taxi in a hurry, my heart racing a bit from this sudden stress. Or he'd ask me to look after their dogs, two energetic golden retrievers, when they went away for a weekend. I loved those dogs, really, but it was a commitment, a few days of my time and energy. He'd drop them off, pick them up, and then nothing. No thank you. No how are you, Mom? Did you manage okay? No asking if I needed anything, if the grocery run had been difficult. I was useful. You see, useful for conveniences, for the little things that made their lives easier. But for celebrations, for genuine care, for simply being seen, I was completely invisible. It hurt. Of course it hurt. That dull, familiar pain settled in my chest, a constant pressure. But I'd always try to justify it. I'd tell myself, "Oh, Eleanor, modern life is so hectic. They're busy. They have so much on their plate." I'd make excuses for them, painting over the cracks with my own hopes and understanding. I thought if I was patient enough, if I understood enough, if I just kept giving, things would go back to how they were. The silence, the increasing distance, it felt like a test. One I kept failing because I hadn't figured out how to make them see me again. Then came the leak. It was a Tuesday morning, I remember. A small drip in the kitchen that turned into a steady stream. My little apartment, usually so neat, was suddenly threatened by water. I called Mark, my son, naturally. Who else would I call? My hand trembled a bit as I dialed, a familiar mix of hope and apprehension. He answered, his voice already sounding impatient, distracted. I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice calm, even though I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. And his response? It hit me like a splash of cold water. "Mom," he sighed, a deep, exasperated sound. "I can't now. Just get it fixed and send me the bill later." Just like that. No, are you okay, Mom? No, is the damage extensive? No concern for me or my well-being or the stress I might be feeling. He only heard a financial problem, a bill to be paid, not a mother, his mother, asking for support, for a moment of his time, for some reassurance. Not a person who was a little scared and needed help. It was just a transaction. That was it. That was the first time, the very first time I truly felt it, that the bond between us, the one I had nurtured and believed in my whole life, was truly, irrevocably breaking. It wasn't just fading or stretching thin. It was snapping. A sharp, clear sound in the silence of my apartment, right after I hung up the phone. And gradually, slowly, painfully, I began to understand. My place in their lives wasn't at the family table anymore. It wasn't in their hearts, or their cherished memories, or even in their daily thoughts. No, my place was on a spreadsheet. Just another line item of expenses. A financial resource to be tapped when convenient. A distant obligation. Nothing more than that. And the realization it was colder than any winter wind. A week passed after that lonely birthday, after that cold call about the leak. A quiet week full of thinking. And a part of me, that old hopeful part, just couldn't let go. I still wanted to connect, to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd realize, that they'd remember. So I decided to try one more time to make a surprise visit. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that used to be filled with family. I baked an orange cake. Mark, my son, loved orange cake more than anything when he was little. It was his absolute favorite, a recipe from his grandmother, a secret little joy we shared. I thought maybe if I brought something familiar, something that spoke of childhood and love, it would break through. We could have coffee, maybe chat a bit, and perhaps, just perhaps, I'd get a belated hug, a quiet apology for everything. I drove to their house. My house, really. The big one in Seattle. The one Arthur and I worked so hard for. As I turned onto the street, my heart, which had been feeling a little lighter with the cake in the passenger seat, began to sink. The street was lined with cars. Not just a few, but a whole parade of luxury cars, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Fancy models I didn't even recognize. And I could hear it, even before I got out of my old sedan. The sound of loud music, thumping bass, and the unmistakable buzz of lively, joyful conversations. It spilled from the open gates, from the wide open windows, painting a picture of celebration. I walked up the driveway, clutching my cake box. I usually just use the kitchen door. It was always open for me, always had been. I pushed it gently, stepping inside. The scene I saw, it paralyzed me. The house, my house, was packed. Every room seemed to overflow with elegant people, all dressed up, laughing, holding expensive-looking drinks. They were everywhere, spilling out into the garden, around the pool. It was a full-blown party, a luxurious pool party. And there, right in the center of it all, were Mark and Deborah, my son and daughter-in-law. They were the perfect hosts, beaming, mingling, their faces alight with a kind of proud joy. They were celebrating, I later gathered, the closing of some major new contract for Mark's company. A success I had, in my own quiet way, helped them build. Mark saw me then, standing at the kitchen door, still holding my orange cake. His smile, that wide, confident smile he'd been flashing at his guests, it just evaporated. It actually disappeared from his face. He came towards me, a little too quickly, a little too urgently. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, but with an edge I hadn't heard before. "What are you doing here? You didn't tell me you were coming." The humiliation was silent. It was devastating. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was just crushing. He took the cake box from my hand, almost snatched it, and without a word to me, handed it to a housekeeper who was passing by. "Take this to the kitchen, please," he instructed her, barely looking at the cake, or at me. Then he turned back to me, his gaze sweeping over my simple dress, my sensible shoes. He didn't ask me to join, didn't introduce me to anyone. He just gestured vaguely towards an isolated chair, tucked away in a corner of the living room, far from the pool, far from the laughter, far from the center of attention. "Sit there for a bit, I'll talk to you later," he said, his voice flat, dismissive. And then, just like that, he turned and went straight back to his guests, back to the sparkling heart of his party. I sat down as he instructed. The chair was hard. I don't know how long I stayed there, but it felt like an eternity. Almost an hour, probably. Just sitting. Invisible. The party roared around me, a vibrant, buzzing thing, full of life and success. No one spoke to me. No one even glanced my way. I was just a piece of furniture, perhaps, a forgotten coat thrown on a chair. Deborah, my daughter-in-law, passed by once. She was laughing, her arm linked with someone important looking. She saw me. Our eyes met for just a second. She gave me a quick, tight nod, a practiced social gesture, without breaking her stride, without slowing down, without stopping. She just kept walking, kept talking, kept laughing. I was a stranger in my own house, sitting there, watching, witnessing the celebration of a success, a life, a luxury that I had poured my heart and soul and every penny I had into building. At that very moment, watching the shimmering pool, the clinking glasses, the joyous faces of my son and daughter-in-law. My grandchildren, probably somewhere in the throng, seeing all that luxury and all that happiness, of which I was clearly not a part. That's when I finally understood. It wasn't just that I was forgotten. It was worse. I was no longer family. I was a relic. A quiet, inconvenient reminder of the past. Something they preferred to keep hidden away, tucked in a corner, out of sight. I didn't make a scene. Not a single sound. I didn't shed a tear in front of them. Not one. The pain, though, it was so deep, so profound, that it almost felt like it went beyond tears. It was like a wound that had finally, utterly bottomed out. And in that depth, in that absolute quiet place, the pain transformed. It solidified, becoming something else entirely. A cold, hard clarity. A sharp, undeniable understanding of what I needed to do. I simply got up from that forgotten chair. My movements were slow, deliberate, calm. I walked to the kitchen door, the same one I had entered through, the one that had always been open to me. My feet felt steady on the polished wood floor of what was once my home. No one noticed my departure, not a single person. The party continued, a roaring wave of laughter, music, and conversation. That sound, that vibrant, uncaring noise, became the soundtrack to my farewell. My goodbye to that life, to that fragile illusion of family that I had nourished, tended, and held on to for so long. The drive back to my small apartment felt different. The air was cooler somehow, sharper. And when I finally stepped inside, the usual quiet of my place wasn't just quiet anymore. It was a blank canvas. The sadness that had clung to me like a shroud for so many years, for so many months, gave way. It receded, replaced by a surge of determination. A feeling I hadn't truly felt, deeply felt in years. Not since Arthur, my late husband, had passed. It was a jolt of energy, a clear, unwavering purpose. I went straight to my wardrobe, not for clothes, but for something much more important. Hidden in the back, behind some old blankets, was the old wooden box. The one that held the documents of a lifetime. Arthur's papers, mine, memories, history. My hands, which had sometimes trembled with age or with worry, were steady as I lifted it out. My fingers traced the worn wood, the faint carvings Arthur had made years ago. With a deep breath, I opened it. Inside, neatly organized, were various folders. I found the one I was looking for, the one containing the deed to the house. That house, the big one, the one where the party was still roaring. I pulled it out, unfolded the thick paper. The owner's name was there, clear as day. Printed boldly, Eleanor Thompson, my name. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the truth, the undeniable legal truth. And beside it, in the same folder, was a copy of my original will, the one that left absolutely everything to Mark, my only son, my only heir. All of it. The house, my savings, everything. I looked at those papers, really looked at them, and my mind drifted back to Arthur, to his voice, gentle but firm, from so many years ago. "This is our safe harbor, Eleanor," he had said, pointing to the house plans spread across the kitchen table. "Take care of it." He had meant it for us, for our future, for our security. I had taken care of it, yes, but I had taken care of it in the wrong way. In my blind love, in my misguided generosity, I had given my safe harbor, our sanctuary, to someone who, without a second thought, had used it as their own luxury yacht, a vessel for their own pleasure, their own status, their own celebrations, leaving me adrift, leaving me to watch from the shore, alone. That night, I didn't sleep, not a wink. My mind, usually prone to wandering and revisiting old hurts, was now laser-focused. I planned every single step, every detail, not with anger, no. Anger would only cloud my judgment. This was bigger than anger. This was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine, not just physically, but spiritually. It was with the precision of a teacher preparing her most important lesson, the one that would finally, truly impart understanding. I thought of Mark, of Deborah, of how they saw me, as frail, as weak, as a forgotten fixture. They thought my silence, my quiet patience, was weakness. They thought I had nothing left. But, in truth, it was my time to prepare, to make my final move. 2 days later, the phone rang. It was Mark. His tone, it was cheerful, bright, as if nothing had happened at all. As if I hadn't been there, sitting in that corner, invisible at his fancy party. He didn't mention it, not a word about my presence or my quiet departure. He just launched into a monologue about this new contract, how big it was, how his company was going to grow even more. And then, there it was, the blow. "Mom," he said, his voice smooth and confident, "to finalize this deal perfectly, I need one last investment. It's a substantial sum, really, but the return is absolutely guaranteed. I thought of you." He wasn't asking, you see. He was informing. It was an expectation, a demand, cloaked in casual conversation, a given. But this time, something was different. For the first time in decades, my voice didn't tremble. Not even a tiny bit. "No, Mark," I said, my voice clear and steady, surprising even myself a little. "I'm not giving you any more money." There was a shocked silence on the other end of the line. A long, stunned pause. I could almost hear his brain trying to process a no from me. Then his voice changed instantly. It became cold, sharp, accusatory. The mask fell right off. "What do you mean, no?" he snapped. "After everything I've done for you, this apartment you live in, your bills, you're so ungrateful." He was twisting reality, turning it inside out, making it sound like I owed him, that my small life, the one I had chosen for peace, was somehow a burden he carried. He was painting me as the villain, the selfish one. The pressure, it really started to increase in the days that followed. It wasn't just Mark anymore. Deborah, my daughter-in-law, started sending me messages. Passive-aggressive little jabs, always carefully worded. She talked about how the grandchildren, Liam and Chloe, would be so disappointed if this deal didn't go through. She spoke about how their grandmother's selfish attitude could actually harm their future. As if my life, my money, was hers to allocate for their benefit. It was a subtle, insidious kind of manipulation, aimed right at my heart, at my love for my grandchildren. Then, even other relatives started to call. People I barely spoke to, distant cousins, an aunt once removed. They had clearly been influenced by Mark and Deborah's version of events. They'd call, their voices hesitant but firm, to tell me I was being too harsh, that I should understand Mark's position, that family should always help family. It was a coordinated effort, it felt like, a slow, suffocating squeeze from all sides. I felt completely alone, truly, utterly, absolutely alone, as if the whole world, my entire family, were against me, judging me for finally saying no. The pain, yes, it reached its peak again. That familiar ache in my chest, it throbbed. It was sharp, a raw wound, but this time it didn't break me, didn't bring me to tears. They used every emotional weapon they had, every last one. They tried to shatter me, to wear me down, to make me doubt myself. They wanted to break me, without ever imagining that I was already on my feet. I was standing tall, and I was more than ready for the final battle. I didn't just feel ready, I was ready. With that quiet, resolute certainty settled deep inside me, I scheduled a meeting. I called Mark, and in a voice I barely recognized as my own, it was so steady, so devoid of the usual hesitation. I asked him and Deborah to meet me, not at my small apartment, but at the large house, their house, as they saw it, the one Arthur and I had worked for, the one I still legally owned. I suggested the following Saturday, proposing we discuss the investment and the family's future. I knew that phrase would hook them. They would hear investment and future and assume it was about what they wanted, about me giving in. And they did. They arrived that Saturday morning, pulling up in their expensive car, walking through the front door, looking perfectly polished, perfectly confident. They were smiling, broad, self-satisfied smiles, clearly certain they had won. They must have thought my call was a surrender, that their pressure campaign had finally worn me down, that I had seen the error of my selfish ways. They looked like people ready to collect their prize, but I wasn't alone, not this time. When they stepped into the living room, their smiles faltered. Mark stopped dead in his tracks. Deborah's perfectly made-up face tightened, because there, sitting on the sofa, right beside me, was Mr. Henderson, our family lawyer, not just an acquaintance, but the man who had handled Arthur's will, who knew our family history, who knew my history, going back decades. His presence was a silent, formal declaration. Their expressions in that instant changed from victorious certainty to something like dawning alarm. Mark was the first to speak, but his usual smooth confidence was gone. His voice was sharper, edged with impatience, trying to regain control. "Mom," he started, making a dismissive gesture towards Mr. Henderson. "There's really no need for all this. You just need to sign the papers for the new funds. We can do this quickly, privately." He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a folder, probably full of the documents he wanted me to sign, away my last bit of security on. I didn't let him finish. I simply interrupted him, calmly, quietly. No shouting, no drama. I just reached down beside my chair and placed a slim leather folder on the coffee table between us. It wasn't a checkbook, the one they probably expected to see. It wasn't a bank statement. It was something far more potent. It was the original deed to the house we were sitting in. I pushed it slightly towards them. "The conversation isn't about the money you want, Mark," I said, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. "It's about this house," Deborah, who had been standing a little behind Mark, let out a short, nervous laugh. A brittle, disbelieving sound. She looked at the folder, then at me, then at Mark, as if waiting for him to explain away this absurd display. "What about the house, Eleanor?" she asked, her voice tight, a forced lightness attempting to cover her growing unease. "It's ours." "No, my dear, it never was," I replied. The words hung in the air, a quiet truth that stripped away all pretense. The calm in my voice, I could see, disarmed them completely. They had braced for anger, for tears, for begging. Not for this quiet, unyielding certainty. Mr. Henderson, bless his steady, professional heart, then leaned forward. He opened his own briefcase, took out a stack of documents, and began to present them. Methodically, the deed, showing my name, Eleanor Thompson, as the sole owner. Then, the property tax receipts. Every single one, meticulously paid by me all these years. Proof that while they lived a life of luxury under this roof, I was the one, quietly, consistently, paying the bills, maintaining the legal ownership. He laid them out, one by one, irrefutable evidence. Then he spoke, his voice clear, official, but not unkind. "Your mother," he said, looking directly at Mark and Deborah, "allowed you to live here out of courtesy. A courtesy that ends today." He paused, letting the words sink in, letting the full weight of them land. "You have 30 days to vacate the property." Mark's jaw, that strong, confident jaw, actually dropped. Literally, his mouth hung open. Deborah gasped, a small, choked sound. The shock on their faces, the dawning horror, the utter disbelief. That was the only justice I needed. There were no shouts from me, no dramatic accusations, no vengeful triumph in my voice. Just the truth, clear, precise, and utterly, absolutely irrefutable. The luxury they had been living in, the success they had so proudly displayed at that party, it was all a mirage, a beautiful, glittering illusion, built on a foundation that was never theirs, a foundation that was and always had been mine. And I was, finally, reclaiming my ground. Not just the house, but my self-worth, my life. The quiet was profound now, broken only by Deborah's shaky breathing. What would they do? Where would they go? That was not my problem anymore. For the first time in so long, it felt like the weight had lifted, and I could breathe again, truly breathe in my own space. This was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a different one entirely. One I would write, for myself, from this very moment forward. I didn't return to the large house, not once. After that meeting with Mr. Henderson, with the truth finally laid bare, I just let it go. The process of selling the property was handled by my lawyer, by professionals. I didn't need to be there, didn't want to be there. And when the deed was finally signed over to a new owner, it wasn't just a piece of paper changing hands. It felt like the weight of all those bad memories, all those years of silent sacrifice and unspoken hurt, disappeared along with it. A huge, invisible burden lifted from my shoulders, from my heart. With the funds from the sale, I secured my complete independence, my peace of mind. It wasn't about lavish spending, not for me. It was about stability, about never having to ask, never having to depend on anyone who didn't truly care. I took some of the money and renovated my small apartment. Nothing extravagant, just making it brighter, more comfortable, truly mine. I added a fresh coat of paint, bought a cozier armchair by the window, invested in better lighting, and on my tiny balcony, a dream I'd always had but never pursued, I started a small garden. I planted colorful flowers, soft herbs like rosemary and basil. Watching them grow, tending to them each morning, it brought me a simple, profound joy. The life that began there in that little space was simpler, yes, but it was infinitely, truly richer. My days now had a different rhythm, a lighter rhythm. I reconnected with old teaching colleagues, women I hadn't seen in years. Busy with my family, with Mark's needs. We meet for coffee now, for lunch, talking about books, about the world, about everything and nothing. I even joined a book club, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I started taking short trips too. Not grand, expensive tours, but quiet, meaningful visits to historic towns. Places like Charleston and Savannah. I'd always dreamed of seeing those charming streets, those old houses, but always postponed it. Always put it off for someday, when Mark was settled, when the kids were grown. Well, someday was finally here, and it was wonderful. On Sundays, instead of the heavy silence that used to fill my home, hoping for a call that rarely came, my apartment now fills with the gentle laughter of friends. We share stories, sometimes tears, but mostly just easy, genuine company. And yes, I still bake an orange cake, but now it's made with joy, with the pleasure of sharing, and not with that desperate, aching hope of recognition. I've learned to celebrate life with those who truly see me, truly value my presence, not for what I can give, but for who I am. Mark, he did try to contact me a few times. First, a few tentative messages, then more insistent ones. After that, actual letters handwritten. He spoke of regret, of missing me, of how things had gone wrong. I read them. I did. But I didn't respond. It's not that I hold a grudge. Not anymore. That burning anger has cooled, leaving only a quiet understanding. But trust, you see, once it's truly broken, shattered into 1,000 pieces, it cannot be mended like an object. It changes everything. It's gone. And I knew, deep down, that going back would only invite the same pattern to repeat. My will, of course, was changed. It was one of the first things Mr. Henderson and I handled. My assets, all that Arthur and I built, all that I had protected, will now go to a charity that cares for abandoned seniors. People who, like I once felt, are overlooked and forgotten. It feels right. It feels like a legacy that truly reflects my heart, my values, the lessons I've learned. Through all of this, through the pain and the letting go, I discovered something profound. The greatest freedom, I realized, isn't about having much, or about having everything you ever wanted. It's about not needing anything. Not needing anything from those who don't truly value you. That for me was the real liberation. The greatest freedom, I realized, isn't about having much or about having everything you ever wanted. It's about not needing anything. Not needing anything from those who don't truly value you. That for me was the real liberation. Eleanor is on her balcony, watering her flowers, and looks at the camera with a serene smile. I'm out here on my little balcony now, with my flowers. See these? The impatiens are just bursting with color today, and my rosemary plant, it smells wonderful. It's peaceful. This small space, it's become my sanctuary. Sometimes I just stand here, watering these plants, and I think about how much of our lives we spend, don't we? So much of it building bridges. We build them with our time, with our effort, with our love, with our money. We believe so deeply that love is a two-way street. It's what we're taught, isn't it? That if you give, you will receive. If you pour your heart into something, into someone, it will come back to you. We sacrifice so much. We concede. We give in. We stay silent when maybe we should speak up. We do all of this, hoping that in the very end, our effort, our unwavering commitment will finally be recognized. We want a place of honor, not a pedestal, not a trophy, just a genuine, valued place in the lives of those we love most. For me, it was my son, his wife, my grandchildren. All I ever truly wanted was just a little affection. A simple phone call on my birthday, just to say, "Hey, Mom, thinking of you." A place at the family table, a seat that felt like it was truly mine, not like a favor they were granting me because they had to. Just to feel seen, to feel like I belonged. That's all. But sometimes, life, it has a funny way of teaching you things you never wanted to learn. It teaches us with a quiet, sharp ache that some of those bridges we so carefully, so lovingly build, they only serve one purpose. They're just for others to cross, to use them to get to where they want to be, to build their own lives, their own dreams, their own successes. And then, once they've crossed, once they've gotten what they needed, they just leave us behind. Standing alone on the shore, watching them disappear into the distance without a backward glance. And you're left there, looking at that bridge, wondering why you ever thought it was meant for two. The hardest lesson, the absolute hardest thing I've ever had to learn, was how to let those bridges crumble. How to let go of the hope, the expectation, the entire structure you've spent a lifetime building. It feels like tearing a piece of yourself away at first. It's painful. It's like watching a part of your own history fall into the water. But you know what? Once they're down, once you accept that they won't be rebuilt, something incredible happens. You realize you're free. Free to pick up the pieces, free to start again, free to build your own path. A path that's just for you. A path where you decide where you're going, who walks beside you, and what truly brings you joy. It's about finding that inner strength, that spark you thought was gone, and using it to illuminate your own way forward. My little garden here, my friends, my quiet travels, they're all part of that new path. It's not about vengeance. It's about reclaiming my own dignity, my own respect, and the value of my own life. Because every person, no matter their age, deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be honored, not as a convenience, but as a human being. And you? Have you ever felt like a secondary character in the story you yourself helped write? And you? Have you ever felt like a secondary character in the story you yourself helped write? It's a powerful question, isn't it? One that really makes you pause and think. For me, realizing I was just a secondary character in my own life, in the family story I had given everything to create, it was a slow, painful awakening. But it finally led me here, to this moment, to this peace. The final scene shows Eleanor laughing, surrounded by friends, sharing a slice of cake on her sunny balcony. The image conveys peace and community. Look at this. Isn't it lovely? My balcony, full of sunshine, and my friends, real friends. The ones who laugh with me, not at me. The ones who ask how I am and truly wait for the answer. We're sharing a slice of cake, a simple orange cake, just like the one I tried to bring to Mark's party. But this one tastes of joy, of genuine connection, not of a desperate hope for recognition. It tastes of freedom. You know, I didn't change my will out of revenge. Not at all. Each new day is a blank page, and I get to fill it myself with laughter, with learning, with little adventures, with the warmth of true friendship. I choose what happens next. I choose who is in my story, and it feels so, so good. It feels like coming home after a very long journey. If my story, if these words have resonated with you, if they've made you feel a little less alone, then perhaps we're connecting in a way that truly matters. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this from the heart, stories that might just touch your own, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. So just take a moment, confirm you are still subscribed to the channel. And while you're there, maybe activate that bell icon. That way, you won't miss a single one of these little conversations we have.